So this is a reaction to Isaiah 53, the suffering servant passage, and this is the Jewish take on Isaiah 53. And something tells me it's just going to be, it's Israel! It's Israel! It's the Jewish people! Which doesn't make sense in context, but let's start.
Christians often quote the book of Isaiah, chapter 53, which they claim refers to Jesus as the suffering servant. But in actuality, Isaiah 53 directly follows the theme of the preceding chapter, which describes the exile and redemption of the Jewish people. These prophets.
All right, so the repeating chapters. I wish he actually quoted like some of the repeating chapters, but I get that this is like a minute and a half TikTok or whatever. But this is a common trope, just as it's about the Jewish people, which would make no sense in the context because it says, "To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" And we all know that the arm of the Lord, like, was already revealed to the chosen people. And it also says he grew up before him like a tender sprout and like a root out of dry ground. So I don't know. Did the Jewish people grow up before the Jewish people like a tender root or like a seed in front of the Jewish people? I guess in front of God. I don't know. But I mean, it's more or less like a reference to Nazareth and a reference to, because Nazareth is similar to root, or at least that's what Hebrew scholar says. Nazareth is similar to the root word for actual root or sprout. And Nazareth is, of course, the birthplace of Jesus Christ. Oh, well, I think it's not the birthplace, but it's where he more or less grew up from. But I really wish. I, for one, think that it's an interchanging play between the Jewish people and Jesus, more or less. But let's see.
Prophecies are written in the singular form because the Jewish people, as in Israel, are regarded as one unit. Throughout the Jewish.
So it's written in a singular form because the Jewish people is regarded as one unit. Okay, so that makes sense why they're not the suffering servants. Okay, that makes sense. But it says in the passage that by his wounds we were healed. So I don't know. Is it, since it's talking about the Jewish people, is it talking about like half the Jewish people suffered while the other half were healed? And by his stripes, I mean, it also explains that he was crushed for our iniquities. So the Jewish people was crushed for the Jewish people's iniquities. And by his wounds we are healed. So I don't know. Is like the Jewish father, was he like hit so the Jewish son could get healed, or was like the Jewish mother hit so like the Jewish daughter can be healed? Like I don't know. Like formally, I don't know how this relates. I guess the suffering of the Jewish people will cause them to be healed, like past sufferings, more or less, will cause healing with the people. I guess you could make that sense like that, like that. I don't know. Um, and for the transgressions of my people, he was punished. So I don't know. For the transgressions of the Jewish people, which is Isaiah's people, the Jewish people were punished, more or less. Like it really only makes sense if it was a single person. I guess like half of the people, the generation considered that he was cut off from the land of the living, that he was so the Jewish people was cut off from the land of the living. I guess. I mean, they're still here, so they're not really cut off. Like, they're actually back to the land of the living, which is Israel, more or less. And his justice was taken away. He was assigned with a grave with the wicked. So the Jewish people were assigned with the grave of the wicked. I guess Jewish people have wicked graves. I don't know. I don't know. But, you know, I guess like half, I guess half of the Jewish people was tortured so the other half can be healed. Or how does it work? 3/4 or 3/4 were tortured so 1/4 can be healed. I don't know how the numbers work. Like, if it's just a massed amount of people, like, then what's the portionality? I don't know, like, what's the, how do you portion this out? He was numbers with the transgressors. He poured out his life unto death. So the Jewish people chosenly poured out their life until death for the Jewish people. So it's just people dying for people, basically. It's just people dying for people. It's just people dying for people. It's just so his life and offer for sin. So Jewish people offered their life for sins for their own Jewish people, I guess. I don't know.
Scripture. Israel is repeatedly called, like in Isaiah 43:8, the servant of God in this.
All right, let's see. Isaiah, Isaiah, Isaiah 43:8. Let's see. Let's see. Lead us out those who eyes been blind, who has eyes, who has eyes for the deaf, who has ears for the deaf, I meant. Okay, so let me see if it's the right passage.
As in Israel are regarded as one unit. Throughout the Jewish scripture, Israel is repeatedly called, like in Isaiah 43:8, the servant.
So this is Isaiah 43:8, and it doesn't call Israel like a servant. It doesn't even use the term servant in this passage. So I don't know what he's talking about. It's more or less talking about how Isaiah 43:8. I'm really trying to.
Scripture. Israel is repeatedly called, like in Isaiah 43:8, the servant.
In Isaiah 43:8. I'm on Isaiah 43:8. It's not saying, it doesn't say servant, it doesn't mention Israel. It's talking about a person who guides like disabled people. What are you talking about?
Of God in the singular. In fact, Isaiah states no less than 11 times in the chapters prior to 53 that the servant of God is Israel.
I wish he actually quotes like the verses. He quoted Isaiah 43:8, which doesn't mention the word servant at all. It's talking about a person helping out disabled people, leading out those who have eyes but are blind, who has ears but are deaf. So yeah, it's talking about, maybe it's talking about a person who's being deceiving, like helping out metaphorical, like disabled people. I don't know, but it doesn't mention servant or Israel in these texts.
Correctly.
So I'm going to assume that you were wrong about this also.
Isaiah 53 clearly and ironically refers to the Jewish people being bruised, crushed, and as sheep brought to the slaughter at the hands of the.
I don't think it's ironically, since, they were actually bruised and crushed. Like, physically bruised and crushed. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't, like, literally they were literally physically bruised and crushed by the Babylonians, by a ton of people. So,
nations of the world. These descriptions, like in Psalm 44, are used throughout Jewish scripture.
I wish he actually quoted a chapter, not a verse. So I don't know in particular which verse he's talking about.
To graphically describe the suffering of the Jewish people. Isaiah 53 concludes that when the Jewish people are redeemed, the nations of the world will recognize and accept responsibility for the inordinate suffering and death of the Jews.
And made an inordinate for our transgressions. No, it doesn't mention any nations or nothing like that down here. But yeah, leave a like. So the suffering servant is just 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 people, man. Just people suffering for their iniquities. Like people's sufferings somehow heal other people. Like, you know what? My scar healed because somebody had their foot cut off. Like that's it. That's it. That's the suffering servant logic. But leave a like. Actually, it should be called suffering servants or just a whole suffering nation.